Joining us now, Steve Bannon, former chief strategist in the White House for the president, campaign chairman. As you know, President Trump campaign engineered that victory. Also, Steve Bannon, now a syndicated radio talk show host, got the hottest show in America, must listen every day, War Room Pandemic. You can hear him across the John Fredericks Radio Network every day live, Monday to Saturday, 10 to noon a.m. Go to warroompandemic.org. You can also get him live on video, same time on AmericaVoice.news on if you have the Dish channel 219, Steve Bannon live, also on WABC 77 in New York. He's all over the place. Steve, great to have you with us, sir.
And also Newsmax TV at 11 o'clock at night. They do a replay of your broadcast, and they put some B-roll on it. So it's actually, you get it, America's Voice streaming, yours live on radio nationwide, and then on Newsmax TV in 70 million homes later in the evening.
I tell you what, Newsmax TV.
There, John.
Newsmax TV is hot. I have become a fan of that. It's on right now. I have DirecTV channel 349 HD. Great station. They're doing a fabulous job there. They're an up-and-comer, so I'm happy you're on that, Steve. Now, I don't stay up for that because I go to bed.
I want to thank you. Your audience may not know the great special we did, co-produced by you on Saturday. Since it was Holy Saturday, we did Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese People, under the Chinese Communist Party, under the CCP. Got us officially banned from Twitter for a couple of days. Now, that's been turned around since so many people went crazy yesterday. But I want to thank you for helping us with that show. It had a big impact. Actually, Newsmax played it again last night in a replay. So it was. I want to thank you for helping us get it done.
Well, Steve, it's been an honor being a big part of your radio show and now your TV show, and having been a part of that from its inception, its genesis, if you will, back in October with War Room Impeachment. But look, Steve Bannon, there's nobody that's been ahead of this pandemic better than Steve Bannon in the United States, maybe the world. You were talking about this all the way back in December. But I tell you what, I've got Mike Pompeo coming on in a few minutes, Steve. But I got to tell you, in an opinion piece in an op-ed in WAPO today by Josh Rogan, in a stunner, let me just read you the title. State Department cables warned of safety issues at Wuhan lab studying bat coronaviruses in 2018. Oh, my goodness. What's going on?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important things. And I think as a country, we're losing the focus here, particularly our elites. You know, we're at each other's throats. People are attacking President Trump. He's punching back, as he always does. The country's got to come together on this. We got to reopen the country. We got to do it in a smart way. We've had some governors that have worked very well with President Trump, Governor Newsom out in California, Governor Cuomo. It's time to get the country, and you got to do it in a smart way to make sure that, we're still a big advocate to be taking time off, and still doing the thing. We think you ought to crush it hard, lock down New York, not fly. But if we're going to unlock, let's do it in a smart, tough way. But the reality is, and I tell everybody, remember, the reason we did that show on Saturday, to get you a taste with the Chinese people, and we had Uyghurs, we had Underground House Christians, we had Cardinal Zen, other Catholic churches partnered at Apple News, we had everybody. For the first time in 2,000 years, as in Passover and in Christianity, we couldn't celebrate those as we normally do. And, it's because of the Chinese Communist Party. And that's why it's amazing to me that the timing of this, that Pompeo is actually coming on your show here. And Secretary Pompeo, there's nobody I hold in higher esteem than Mike Pompeo. I mean, he's been fantastic, not just in the House, but really as President Trump's wingman at the CIA and now at the State Department. Very first guy we hired, actually, cabinet official. This Josh Rogan is considered the most well-sourced columnist of any columnist at any major newspaper in the country regarding China. And he is a hawk. Josh Rogan's a hawk. This story today from Cables, remember I had Bill Gertz on the show when we first launched, John, the very first episode, and the Washington Post the next day were mocking Gertz, mocking Tom Cotton. They said this whole thing's a conspiracy theory. You got these kooks like Gertz and Bannon and other people talking about the Wuhan lab. And we weren't saying it came from the Wuhan lab, but that we don't believe in coincidences. We don't believe that, how do you have a P2 lab for the Chinese CDC and how you have a P4 lab which is the highest classification you get, studying SARS viruses that happen to be near this wet lab. It's too coincidental. And everybody knows China knows Wuhan is a medical research center for the People's Liberation Army, more than just the SARS viruses. So it was stunning that it happened there. And Rogan's report today is pretty breathtaking because it essentially says there has been no evidence whatsoever it's come out of the wet market. There's just not. We know that patient 0, and this is from a Chinese publication, is from mid-November, from sometime around November 17th, and had no association with the wet market at all. And so this report today of Cables shows you State Department people who were managing the relationship, and I think part of it's this relationship at the University of Texas at Galveston that was funding some research there on this bad coronavirus, or these bad viruses. They basically said that this P4 lab is terribly managed. It's just not managed tight enough. I mean, these labs deal with the most deadly pathogens in the world. That's why there's so few of them. There's only a couple here in the United States. There's a couple in Europe. In fact, the French, who are very good at this, built this lab for the Chinese, and a consensus of everybody that they should have one, although being very controversial. Mm-hmm. And this is why was it built? Because of SARS. And remember, the coronavirus, that I call the CCP virus, is really just SARS-2. So everybody's got to, I hope you put it up, everybody's got to read this Washington Post, because now you're seeing that actually inside the government, people that knew, people that this is their job, were incredibly worried about a Chernobyl-type situation, that just like in Chernobyl, the Russians didn't really have a team that knew what they were doing, and it was the mistakes and the incompetence of the local management. And then the suppression of that information. That's why, remember, we had on the show Thayer and Leon Chanhan, John, as you remember, in the first 2 or 3 episodes, they call it a biological Chernobyl. Mm-hmm. This Josh Rogan column today, off of State Department cables, showed that there was worry at the highest levels that the Chinese didn't know what they were doing. It was terribly supervised. They were doing bad research and not handling it properly, and that you could potentially have an accident. And listen, it's incumbent upon the Chinese Communist Party, to me, now more than ever, to come forward. And I think that's why Secretary Pompeo has been so tough on the Chinese Communist Party. People have to understand the destruction of our economy, the destruction of the European economy, all the deaths throughout the world, they're all at the doorstep of the Chinese Communist Party. And listen, even if it didn't come from an accident, we know they lied to everybody about the human-to-human transmission. They knew it was human-to-human transmission because the Free Republic of Taiwan told the WHO and told everybody on 31 January of 2019. And it was also known, that got known inside the CDC, our CDC, at the highest levels very quickly around that time. People knew in late December that there was a outbreak of a SARS-type virus with human-to-human transmission. There's been a study. If the Chinese Communist Party had been truthful at that moment and fessed up to the world, 95% of the deaths, 95% of the economic destruction would have been avoided. Mm-hmm. We could have avoided all this. None of the people would have died in Wuhan. Nothing would have happened in Hubei. You could have shut this down you could have taken extreme harsh measures down in Wuhan, and you could have stopped all this. And that's why I think one of the things we're losing in this conversation is the responsibility and culpability of the Chinese Communist Party, and quite frankly, what they're going to have to do in compensation, whether it's through lawsuits or whether it's through seizing of their assets or however we do it. We have to understand, I think, that the economic and information war they've been running on us has just got to take up to the next level. But this column, every one of your listeners should read this today.
We're going to put that up today on our website and also on Trump Nation News. But, Steve, how has this turned so political now? Like you take yesterday, Monday, right, on Drudge, Daily Mail, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, WAPO, even the Wall Street Journal, savaging the president over this New York Times article that a lot of people like me read that, and I just thought it was fake news, a lot of it. Why are they savaging
we called
Trump
it on the
now?
show yesterday is that Fauci, listen, I'm proud of the show because I think we forced Fauci to do the walk back. That was us hammering for 2 solid hours yesterday, hammering. like I said, I've never seen a beatdown from Drudge to Daily Mail to across the board. I mean, they were savaging President Trump. I believe the story, the New York Times story, actually was positive for President Trump in the fact that he took the right action when everybody else was, and Fauci and these guys were not at the time. They did not support the travel ban from China.
Right.
They just didn't support it.
Right.
Absolutely, we know for a fact that they fought it. But why? Because he took the World Health Organization's party line. He took the World Health party line that you never stop travel from these countries. First of all, they don't want to. They're all globalists, so they don't want to admit their national borders. But their theory is it just makes the country try to hide the information. I don't buy that, but that's their theory. Remember, also, Fauci's on the record. He's on John Katzmatidis' show, and he's on Newsmax TV saying that America has this is nothing to worry about. No
risk.
Katzmatidis and guys at WABC were saying, Bannon, why is your hair on fire? Why did you take the great impeachment show, and it's going to be 2020? Why did you take it from 2020 this pandemic? Why did you do this? Your hair's on. Fauci tells us there's nothing to worry about. That's Fauci's quote. There's nothing to worry about. We have nothing to worry about. That's the same time the Haberman story. That's the exact same time the Haberman story, the New York Times story goes through. President Trump took, and here's what he doesn't get credit for. It wasn't just stopping the flights from China. He quarantined people, right? Which hadn't been done in 50 or 60 years.
On the ships.
Yeah, he enforced the quarantines right there. Well, on the ships, and also the people that came in off of that and other things. If you had a site of the virus, you were in a self quarantine. You were in a be quarantined. That's that had not been done. Wasn't just the ships. If you came in and you had you had the virus, you're going to be quarantined. That's a huge move on which he doesn't get credit. But my point is that from that story, you saw it was a 2-day beatdown. But I think we're also missing the signal from the noise. To me, that's still all noise, right? The signal is, and that's where I think he's had a good working relationship with these governors. He's announced these councils. Newsom's going to announce his plan today. I think the president's going to work with these governors and just get on with it about what is a smart way to have this rolled out. What you don't want to have is another outbreak of this, a big outbreak in the fall. What you want to do is do this in a smart way, do it in a tough way, flood the zone with testing, make sure that these therapeutic medicines are all over the place. And to do this, we're going to walk through in very detail on the show today, John. But I think you got to do it very smart, and you got to do it. You got to do it smart, and you got to do it fast, and you got to do it tough.
Can we start doing it in May 1st?
I think you can start doing it. I think by mid-May, definitely. Right. If you got the testing, I mean, that's what we're trying to get. I think it was Vice President Pence said they'll have 20 million ability to test 20 million people right off the bat on the antibodies. Remember, you have to have the concept is mass on point. You have to have therapeutics, the test itself, the surveillance test, the ability to do contact tracking, and also the antibodies test. You pour all that in, I think you can start. I think certain regions could definitely start being looked at to being open, places out west, Arizona, places in Texas, maybe up, and then have California come in right after that, and then work your way back east. But I think you could do this. Remember, the last thing you want is another big outbreak of this thing. That's why today I keep saying you got to have football in the fall. You got to have NFL and college football.
Right.
But I did see where some of the colleges think they're going to do it online. If you don't have football this fall, I think that's a big blow to the American psyche. I think everybody's got to be focused on.
Got to have football.
You got to get this thing organized. You got to have football.
Got to have football, man. You got to have football, Steve. I mean, you're absolutely right. And a lot of people, a lot of these red states governors are about to open things up. We got to bust out of this. I think everybody got staying home for the month of April. They all got it. There's a stimulus, $2.2 trillion. The PPP is extremely effective, but it's for 1 month. After that, I mean, we have got to get out of this thing and put people back to work. I mean, Steve, we're going to end up with 30 million unemployed the first week in May.
It's just not putting people back to work. It's that people are – look, we're Americans. People are just not – I think anybody – and that's why we kept arguing, if you're going to do it hard.
Right.
Everybody locked down, stop everything. But Americans are just not – this talk, and you see this on some MSNBC, of 18 months and 2 years. I assume there's not going to be a vaccine. I just don't because I don't see a vaccine for SARS-1. And they say, well, hell, there wasn't any money there. There's a lot of money here. Maybe we get a vaccine, but that's going to be in 18 months to 2 years, right? And a vaccine would be fantastic. But you have to do this in a way that you use. Remember, we don't have a vaccine for HIV, but you got lots of therapeutics.
Right.
You have to get this organized. people are just not going to – we're Americans. It's just not – this thing's not going to work about, a lockdown over months and months and months and months. So that's why I think at the latest, I think you'll start seeing mid-May that actually governors will be at the forefront of this. So Gavin Newsom's going to walk through his plan today at noon Pacific time. I think the other governors in this consortium they've got in the East are going to walk through. I think the president's going to announce his council today. So I think you're starting to see action, going forward.
We're almost out of time. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. I'm with Stephen K. Bannon. Stephen K. Bannon, former strategist for the President of the United States campaign, chairman, now also the host of a syndicated radio and TV show, War Room Pandemic, 10 to noon, John Fredericks Radio Network, Newsmax, 11 p.m., live on America's News, The Dish, Channel 219, 10 a.m. That's Monday to Saturday. Steve, final question. The politicization of this now, the Democrats trying to put their new Green Deal in the Phase 4 package. You heard Joe Biden say yesterday on tape, he said, we have to take advantage of this opportunity. 22,000 people dead, millions of people out of work. How the hell is that an opportunity? What is he talking about, Steve?
Yeah, I know. I think that's, if President Trump had said something like that, look, it shows you how cold and callous, Beijing Biden is. Biden, to me, is by far the weakest candidate the Democrats could put up. That's why I continue to say 10 to 15, maybe 20% of the Bernie supporters are going to support President Trump, particularly in the upper Midwest. Mm-hmm. But they understand the existential threat that China, that the CCP, not the Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party have to the well-being and prosperity and peace of the United States. So I think that callous, 22,000 dead, and even the projections on the low end from the president's team are in the 50 or 60,000 Americans will die of this. To have Biden look at this as an opportunity to force a political agenda on the Green New Deal it shows you what kind of guy he is. Besides the false front of Uncle Joe, he's a very calculating individual. So I also don't think there's going to be an infrastructure bill because it's too politicized. I think you got to get through. You have to open up the economy,
right?
Because what you can't have the fourth leg of this can't be $2.3 trillion. I mean, we're already the United States of the Federal Reserve right now. And look, you're the canary in the mine shaft. The way that talk radio, and particularly the talk radio advertisers, make out is going to be how the economy is going to come back, because we're essentially a service economy. So it's I think you will have a four. I hope most of that is focused on the triple P, which is the payroll protection of the small business owners.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing
Great
that should
program.
be the focus, is to keep the guys that advertise on your radio station are the backbone of the economy right now, and providing jobs. They're the ones that got to be bridged. This is just a bridge. It's not a stimulus. It's just because we've had demand destruction. One thing I think we're missing this, John, that we're trying to get on the show today and throughout the week is oil and gas. I just think the Saudis have taken a hit on us, in that the oil and gas industry has taken a big hit out in Texas, Pennsylvania, and up in the northern plains, and that's going to be a big issue for getting the economy back going.
We have to figure that out, and there's no doubt that the Saudi effort here was meant to put our natural gas and production of oil under water so they could better compete. But Steve, I'm out of time. I know you have to take off. I want to thank Stephen K. Bannon for being with us.